Hey everybody, this is Jon Croft with Cultural Warfare with Jon Croft, and this is Jon Croft. How are you doing, everybody?
Hi, how are you?
How have you been doing, Rebecca?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Good. And some news this week, not a ton, but how about you? Have you had much going on, really?
Not much going on. I'm starting to finish reading this book, and it's really good. Surprised by Joy by C.S. Lewis. Took a little break from it, and I'm finishing it now, and it's really good.
Well, should we announce what's going on?
Sure.
Sort of. Well, we'll reveal a tiny bit of what's going on. Rebecca lost her job, and that means that our little media operation will have some changes going on. Not sure if it's a good or bad thing quite yet. Um, New responsibilities are hard. New changes are hard. And we probably will end up moving. Um,
Yay.
so if I seem a little bit down, now you know why. Yeah, Rebecca's left her job already. She will get a severance of some sort, I'm sure, but yeah, so that's happening, and my business doesn't make any money. Um, we're debating right now whether to keep my business or move on to something else. And we're not quite sure on that yet. So going from zero on a business to making money is not an easy thing to do. Most businesses fail. If you know anything about small businesses, a good 80% or so of them fail. This is no exception. We shouldn't think that we're above this, and nothing ever bad will happen to us, etc. So, in fact, I'm reading my children's Job, the book of Job. And Job is a great book to read to your kids, by the way. A lot of people think they think it's just depressing and stuff like this. Job is about how God is in control, even when bad things happen. But also, we have to understand that God might do things we don't like and we don't think is good, but that's because your definition of good isn't so good. But also, our quote friends who come around and try to encourage us are not always very encouraging. Job's three friends, good old friends. And what people often do is they use standards like standards of good against other people. So if things aren't going so good with you, then they think, oh, there must be something wrong with you. That's the problem. And so so that's a great lesson to teach your kids, by the way, because kids can start to think, because daddy can teach them that, oh, you got to do the right thing, better do the right thing, do good, be good. And then they start to get this idea almost very naturally of a legalistic attitude. Very easily, kids can get this. And so you have to really train up kids to understand that sin, for example, comes from our disobedience of God. It doesn't come from disobedience of like family, like them being not obeying me is not sin, right? Sin is when you disobey God, and it's not when you disobey government or other social structures. So it's a great lesson for kids, I have to say. Um,
It's a great book. I've been really enjoying it.
I'm sorry, we talking about Job or Surprise
Job.
and Joy? I forgot.
Job, yeah.
So
Job
yeah,
is
that's what's
good.
going on. Not all great stuff. So sorry, Rebecca, if I was like anything going on with you? Obviously there were, but things, but you didn't feel the liberty to say it, and we actually I didn't even tell you I might announce it. I actually wasn't even thinking of it. And then right before this, I was like, you know what? I mean, I could announce some of this because it's not like we have a plan anyway of what we're gonna do. So we don't have a lot to say about it, except that it happened. These
Yeah.
things happen.
Yeah, there were a lot of layoffs.
A
And
lot of layoffs. Probably a third of the company was laid off.
yeah.
Um, and so we were talking about the Daily Wire before, and people are like, "Oh, the Daily Wire's falling apart because they laid off a bunch of people." That's true. As far as I know, that's true. But your company's even worse. Oh my goodness, so much worse. And QVC supposedly is going to continue the company, but I don't know under what conditions they're going to continue it with all these people gone. I mean, that's probably a lot of their income is going to be gone as well. So that's tough, man. A lot of things have happened since I think some of this is a result of the political changes because politics has an impact on many of these things. Um, and I mean, just the fact that our money got inflated so greatly during the last presidency has an enormous impact, more than you'd think. Like egg prices like doubled. Just that's just eggs, but like a lot of things happened pretty quickly. But after 4 years of that, it was noticeable even to hardcore people that that followed Biden. Even they were like, ooh. So yeah, there's a reason that Trump won. Not to get too political. And there's a reason that this business went under, you know. And a lot of people wouldn't make that connection, but I do. Anyway, so yeah, you lost your job. We're
Yeah.
gonna be hopefully hopefully our move and everything will be paid for the most part, but not much more than that. I mean, that's we gotta we gotta we gotta hit the ground running where we're going. And so we need to make a good plan. And we're in the middle of trying to do that. So we're not quite there yet on making a plan. So
Yeah,
anyway,
Thursday is last, not yesterday, but last Thursday.
literally about a week ago. Yeah, we had just learned about it last week, this time last week about, and we didn't know very much at the time except that you had lost your job, and we didn't tell barely anybody in those first few days. So yeah,
Yeah, we knew that layoffs were coming, but we didn't really expect it for our team. So it was a surprise.
big surprise because your team is totally internet based, does not need to
Yeah.
have any kind of studio or editing suites locally. And so we were like, this department makes tons of money, not a big
Yeah.
deal. No, apparently they have no idea. I mean, I think they made a big mistake of chopping off HSN2 for sure because you guys made so much money for them. I mean, millions of dollars for them.
Yeah. It was a
They really
surprise.
chopped off an arm and a leg. Uh,
Well, as Job says, the Lord gives and the Lord takes away. Blessed be the name of the Lord.
Blessed be the name of the Lord. That's right. We're gonna try to be good like Job, but I don't know. Job was a pretty good dude, uh,
I
in the
just
legal sense of the word.
I have hope. The Lord teaches me to have hope. He really wants me to be hopeful. So I'm just hopeful. It says in Jeremiah, I know the plans I have for you to give you a hope and a future, not to harm you, but to give you a hope and a future. So I have hope.
Well, so we got a few stories. I was only able to write two articles this week, so let me share it. But this one is about El Tonto Por Cristo, the Fool for Christ, in the midst of funding. So a couple from Dallas, you can go to the site here. They completed filming for El Tonto Por Cristo, but often the most grueling, expensive, lengthy process is editing and post-production. This is where the film is now. And about the origin of the story, as stated in the description, El Tonto Por Cristo was born during a lunch date with Jess in downtown Dallas, that's his wife, at the tail end of our film festival run with our first feature, This World Won't Break. As Eastern Orthodox converts, we craved something cinematically that enveloped the Orthodox faith's beauty, mystery, and oral tradition, but set in America. We couldn't find what we were looking for, so I decided with fear and trembling, a lot of research, a priest consult, and many prayers to set on this marvelous adventure. In regards to the making of the film, El Tonto Por Cristo became and is a whimsical tale about a holy fool at a mythical monastery on the coast of Texas. It stars Matthew Posey, who's in these projects, Jordan Walker Ross, who's in The Chosen, and Frank Mosley, who was in Freeland and the Ghost Who Walks. It was filmed in and around Dallas, and they are looking for post-production funds. You can go to their GoFundMe. They're about halfway there with only about 12,000 raised out of 25,000. That is not a lot of money for post-production, guys. That's not a lot. For a feature film, you can talk easily $100,000. I mean, so 25,000 is pretty decent. Here's a trailer for their first film, This World Won't Break. And I believe that's actually the director, who's a writer, director, performer, I believe. I could be wrong about that, but yeah, that was just their first film.
Oh,
And
that
this is
sounds really good.
mm-hmm.
That sounds really cool. I didn't know they were Eastern Orthodox converts.
Yeah, actually, I learned about them from the 21 short.
Mm-hmm.
So that one, I learned about Mandy Hart and a few other people. Obviously, Todd Polson, who directed the 21, and Mandy Hart, who produced it, along with a few others. More Productions also is helping with this film. So El Tanto por Cristo. We
I love
hope
it.
that it's a good, successful project and that they get fully funded. And yeah, so it's got a cool look to it, and it's got some talent, some great talent in there. So I think it'll probably be pretty good. I'd watch that trailer too if you're interested. It's high quality. So yeah, another story. This one is really the big story. Besides the main topic we'll be talking about, which is about Narnia. This one looks pretty cool though. If you've seen the trailer for Sketch, oh my goodness, you probably love it. Seth Worley's charming indie vibe Sketch comes to theaters in August. I'm really quite impressed that Angel Studios has purchased this and is going to be bringing it out on August 6th at theaters. Speaking of which, if you remember, last week we spoke about devastating rights dispute between Angel Studios and David. Well, they added an extra film to their fall slate. This one, which is August 6th. I guess that's the end of summer, really. But they've added an additional film. I think that's to replace the loss of additional revenue from David. So there's this film. David has just released a bunch of great trailers, by the way, including this one. This is probably the best of the trailers, which is why I'm talking about it. But also there was Trial and Treason, was it? And Oh, Zero AD. I'll be talking about Zero AD soon because I wanted to save that for next week. But that looks really great. That's the next Alejandro Monteverde picture, Zero AD, which is about Herod, who killed the children when Jesus was born, killed the children of Bethlehem. I mean, shocking stuff. And so very dark subject matter. So this appears to be a very dark, Zero AD appears to be a very dark version of that story. But darkly beautiful the way they did the cinematography, which Alejandro Monteverde is known for incredible cinematography. Anyway, we're back at this sketch story, which
It
even though
looks
many
so
people
good.
think of, even though many people think of it as a horror because of the way the trailer is, and if you pick up on it though, it's actually more of a comedy or a dark comedy. But in the story, and I'll read some of this for you in a minute, but because I talk a lot about Seth Worley, who I've been following for years, by the way, in his career. I didn't know if this film was ever going to happen. It took him 5 years to make it, but it looks wonderful. So let's watch the trailer.
Yay.
So good.
You have to promise not to freak out.
I won't forget. I won't.
This is the blood eater. It eats blood and pukes the blood back onto people.
Okay.
That's always kind of been her thing, right?
I love Tony
Drawing.
Hale.
All kids like to draw.
Yeah, but has she always been so...
Dark?
We felt a phone call wouldn't convey the...
Blood?
I don't care what people think of me.
Oh, well, you should. No.
I found this place in the woods. We dropped Amber's notebook in it. And now I'm worried that Amber's drawings might be...
What are you talking about?
Amber drew that?
She's working through some stuff.
You're not an evil person just because you drew some evil pictures.
Every part of that was horrifying.
I know.
August 6th. Yeah, so wow. What did you think?
That, that looks great. Tony Hale just really knows how to say so much with so little.
Awkwardly simple statements that are pregnant with comedy.
Yeah,
Yep.
he's so good with that. Every part of that was horrifying.
He's working through some stuff. If you don't know, by the way, the synopsis of this story, the character that he plays, a single father, is also grieving through the loss of his wife, which means her mother. So did all these people, caretakers, think of the fact that she's working through some stuff with her drawings? Right. And I think so if you think about that, this is the meaning of the story. This is what the story is about. It's about grief and loss. So when people are grieving, they're going through some difficult stuff. They do stuff like draw horrifying pictures. And then we have a little talk about this, honey. We were talking about while we were on our walk, we were talking about how the great thing about these talents that kids have and adults have, obviously the arts, the great thing about them is they provide a medium by which you can talk about things that you otherwise can't talk about, things that hurtful things,
Yeah,
difficult things. You make art to work your way through it.
yeah,
And that art that she's making is something to talk to her about, and a roundabout way to talk about her loss of her mother.
Yeah.
So what you do is, instead of talking about the loss of her mother, you talk about her art. And you say, what, like, wow, that's amazing. What were you like, where did you come up with that image? And you just talk about it. This is
Yeah.
what art is for. It's not, it's an indirect way to handle the difficult, strange things of life,
Right.
right?
It
And by
becomes
doing that, you are really more directly healing it.
yeah. The art becomes a mediator.
Yeah. Yeah. It's another language. I think of art as it's a form of communication. Expression, people say expression is communication. So it's just not a direct form of communication necessarily. And sometimes that's the best communication there is, right? So because why? It speaks more truthfully what people really feel. And so Seth Worley, by the way, I don't know if you know much about him, but he's a very talented storyteller. He even teaches people about storytelling. He's been doing that for years. He's working for 5 years to make this film. Before that, he made a ton of short films, probably about 10 short films. And one of them he made was called Darker Colors. This is the story I wrote, like I wrote about him at Media Moses here. And one of the parts in the article is about how he made Darker Colors, which was inspired by Stranger Things. But the unique quality of Darker Colors was it was kids who draw pictures, and their monsters and their pictures come to life. And they have to like defeat them and with like squirt guns and fun things like that. And it's just a lot of fun. It's also got a darkly comedic quality to the short. Although I think he leaned more into the comedy with Tony Hale. Having Tony Hale on board allowed them to do that, I think, much better. But I think they leaned more into the comedy a lot more for the feature, which is a very smart move. It makes it more deeply endearing and charming. And instead of just being about kids in dangerous situations like Stranger Things, right? It's it's kids dealing with real problems, but they're relatable problems. And there's more, and there's the comedy of it, right? The wry kind of ironic, sometimes sarcastic, sometimes, just satirical stuff that they get to do with the storytelling and with these actors like Tony Hale. It's really quite endearing. So yeah, he's made a lot of shorts. He's done storytelling for a long time. And I even think of what he made as its own genre, because I know it's a dark comedy. It's kind of a dark comedy, but I think of it as quirky Christian, because he is a Christian, but he's not working in the faith-based industry part of it, not in the faith-based genre. He's working more in this quirky Christian genre, I think of it. And there's been other Christian films like this that are kind of indie vibes. You could call like Blue Like Jazz like that as well. Um, and I think there was one that was like a romance. What was it called? Old Fashioned. I thought of that as it's not as quirky, but it's very indie. It's got the indie vibe to it. And so yeah, I'm really excited for Sketch. Angel, I think, has got like what? There's Sketch, there's one in October, and there's one in December. And
Yeah.
they've got a lot of films coming this fall.
So who's producing Sketch?
Steve Taylor
That's
is one of his producers, yes. And that's actually how I learned about this project. It's not that I was following Seth Worley alone. I follow Steve Taylor on IMDb as well. And whenever he's doing something like Blue Like Jazz, right, I'm following it. And I know a lot of people were disappointed in that film, because there were some subjects that were not like very wholesome. But this is like college humor, like, and a lot of people enjoy college humor. Obviously, you have to be of a certain age as a Christian to enjoy college humor. But one great thing about Blue Light Jazz is it came before all these incidences of people what's called deconstructing.
Mm.
So like now you have the issue, I guess you could say now we've also always had an issue of people thinking that they're cool by leaving, by dramatically exiting the church. Dramatic exit. Let me fill your life with drama while I deconstruct. And the truth is, these people were probably going to deconstruct already, or they already did, but they want to make a little dramatic exit while they're doing it. Well, this is not a dramatic exit. This is authentically talking about issues with your faith. Blue Like Jazz was. And so a lot of people didn't like the themes. They didn't like kind of, you could say, the raw authenticity of it. And faith-based film at this time was not very well acquainted with raw authenticity. And this is like the time of like God's Not Dead and stuff like this. So authenticity was not necessarily, it was like almost frowned upon.
Mm.
And even today, it's still hard to find great, authentic, faith-based film. But people like Sketch, right? Seth Worley, other people who make authentic work. Alejandro Monteverde obviously makes authentic work. And so it's becoming more and more prominent to do real stuff, even if it's like veering into the realm of like horror or things like this. The idea is to be very authentic and not like propagandistic, like yay us. No, it's not to do that. That was the good thing about Blue Like Jazz. It was not like a yay us moment. It was a let's be self-examining here. Are there issues in the church? Do people fall into sin and then not explain what's going on with them? And so I don't know. I love Steve Taylor because he's always doing authentic art as an authentic Christian. And I also love his music. I've always loved his music. Growing up, I loved his music. Um, and I'm very impressed by him.
Yeah, authentic is a good word to describe his music. He was often, I don't know, calling out the church, I think, in his music,
Yep,
or calling out hypocrisy in the church.
absolutely. From the beginning, he had a
Mhm.
song called I Want to Be a Clone.
Yeah.
I want to be a clone. Like all the other clones in church doing the same thing, going the same way, saying the same things, right? Because why? Because he was noticing this quality that's not good in the church of cloning, being a little clone of other people in your church.
Hmm.
That's not how we're meant to be in the body of Christ, which has diverse, various parts that have to learn to respect each other.
Hmm.
If you're like, no, everybody has to be a left hand or whatever, like me, that signals a problem, right? So, but then of course that can get even worse, where you want to like schism from other people because they're not like you. That's when that problem gets really like a disease, right? You don't just dislike those people and oh, you stay over there. No, now you excommunicate people. So that's a disease in the church. But like you know, artists can point these things out, and that's why we need to listen to them. So if that is a real problem, then there ought to be church leaders going, what is going on here? Steve Taylor, you've brought up this lovely point that you're making. And where is it you've noticed it? And I know I've noticed it in places as well. And what do you think is causing that? Let's have a discussion about that. That's what rational people do. Like there's a problem. There's a problem with me. There's a problem with you, man, in the church. Let's discuss it. Let's talk about what the problem is. See if we can fix it. We know we're not perfect. It's absurd to think so. So, of course, someone's going to point out I have an issue at some point because they're loving to do so. And then what's the way to respond to that? It's graciousness, being gracious. Thank you for pointing that out. That really is that issue could get worse and worse if we don't solve it. It's only going to get worse if we don't solve it. That's what happens to diseases. You don't heal them, they just grow, become metastasized, tumors. You got to cut that stuff out. So you got to deal with it. You got to get your immune system working to deal with that problem in the church. Discussions do that. It brings to light problems, right? And then if you can bring it to light, then you can expose it to sun and light and air. All those things kill diseases. That's what they do. So, but if we can't do that, if we refuse to do that, if we refuse to talk about these things, but if we refuse to handle it in a rational adult way, these things just continue and they stay metastasized and they just become this. And guess what? In the podcast from 2 weeks ago, I say, awaken, O church. And what am I talking about? I'm talking about a problem in the church, a metastasized problem, which is why we can't create community and therefore culture. Because why? We don't talk about things with two ideas that are differences of opinion. Imperfect people do this, right? Two ideas can be in your head at the same time. You don't have to get offended or upset about the fact that someone's in your church and they have a different doctrine than you. Oh, who's that guy over there? He has a different doctrine than me. I'm so offended, right? And so everything becomes about doctrinal perfection. And if you're not perfect, then you just get rid of those people, right? It's absurd to think we all have the correct view on where did the Holy Spirit derive from, Christ or the Father? I don't know everything about God. Oh my, I must be as evil as Satan himself. No, it's absurd to think you even know that. Just to think you should know that is absurd. Are we tasked with knowing that to become Christians? No, of course not. It's absurd. In the Eastern Orthodox Church, isn't it good to have mysteries of God? Yes, it's a mystery. We don't know. How about that? How about that as your answer? We don't know. But what we have today, we have, you have to have perfect doctrine. Must be so perfect so that we can accept you and you'll be good in our eyes. And then you can stay in the church. Oh, good. I'm not schismed. That's nice. Imagine all the people that are hiding sin when they know that they won't be accepted for their doctrine, their differences in their doctrine. So this just gets worse and worse as you go on. Anyway, how did I get on that subject?
Steve Taylor.
Steve Taylor, thank you. Yes. So Steve Taylor is, I think, a great artist, great man, and wants to bring wants to expose the church to light and beauty and air, and wants the healing to happen in the church. And where it can't happen, then there's a problem, If you want to check out my thoughts on Sketch, on Quirky Christian Cinema, on what I call wisdom art house, which is primarily Terrence Malick style, check out my article on mediamoses.com where I talk about sketch. And I am very excited for Angel to have Sketch coming out in theaters. This could be a really great film. It could perform really well. At least I hope it will. And also check out Seth Worley's other little videos. He's got an interview here with Tony Hale. He's really funny. He talks about his story clock workbook he sold here for his storytelling teaching seminar stuff. He even has a session of him teaching about storytelling here. And he's got some other I put some other short films here, as well as Darker Colors that I mentioned with these kids. It's really charming. I almost want to play some of it, but I'll do that maybe another time. The other subject I'd like to talk about is, I don't have an article on it. I plan to write an article on it, but it's about how Netflix is turning Aslan into a woman. And so it hasn't fully been decided yet, but it's been revealed that Greta Gerwig, who I've mentioned as a feminist, as a mega feminist director, has now asked Meryl Streep to play Aslan. And this is just as I predicted. And I asked people to boycott, and nobody listened. I asked people who are C.S. Lewis fans, why are we okay with this? Nobody has an answer. Nobody seems to care. And now here we are. All we had to do was have a petition and have a little mild boycott of Netflix and Greta Gerwig and say, why is this being allowed to happen to C.S. Lewis's legacy? And now here we are. So they're planning, as far as I know, for Aslan to be a woman, played by Meryl Streep. And people wonder why these things happen. And I don't know why they're wondering. I'm telling them why it's happening. Not only is Hollywood obsessed with feminism and obsessed with these other terrible ideologies, but the church has been flirting with feminism for decades. And feminism is an anti-family ideology. It's anti-male, it's anti-family, and it's anti-God. And nobody wants to do anything. Nobody wants to make a stand against it. Probably because they're flirting with feminism. I think that they think that they're virtuous if they become feminist. What do you think, honey? What's going on?
Yeah, I think it's seen as like a virtue, like seen as like a civil rights kind of thing. Like if you're for women's rights and you're just a good person, like who wouldn't be for women's rights? You know, like that's just kind of the attitude, I think. But like we have rights, so like we have our rights already. So I don't really know what the point is.
Yeah, a lot. I do appreciate that there's some philosophers and people who talk about this, but some of them go farther with it in understanding that the problem came from back in the day with the philosophy behind the Enlightenment itself, which was at the period, right, of the French Revolution, at the period of Napoleon, at the period of all these people who said, oh, we don't need the church anymore. to govern society or to help to govern society or even to serve as a backstop against state abuse of power. We don't need the church anymore. We're going to become our own leaders, our own gods, and we're going to do whatever we want. And that's essentially what the Enlightenment said. The Enlightenment said that the state is in charge of everything and the church has no power. So therefore, why don't we just get rid of it? Or at least get rid of the quote illusion that the church has power. And that's fine. You can get rid of the illusion that the church has power. But the funny thing is the church really didn't have power. And even the church knew that. It was a cultural power. It was a soft power, right? That's always what it was meant to be. It was meant to be an advisory capacity, a cultural influence, something from the back that said, you know what, we care about human rights. We care about some kind of moral uniting principle, some order in our philosophy of governance, some order in our culture and in our society, something that drives us forward as it comes to having purpose in life and values in our culture and society. And so if you eliminate that, what does that really mean? There was no power there stopping you from doing things. It was the Pope or the bishop saying, we don't approve of the king. We don't think that the king's doing the right thing. Now, I'm not saying that there wasn't sometimes hard power behind that. And sometimes that hard power shouldn't be there. True. Absolutely true. But now it's like not even cultural influence. And that's not a good thing. So, a Christian lawmaker is going to put Christian values in their laws. That doesn't make it a theocracy. And that's silly to think so. So, American democracy was never a theocracy, even though they were all a bunch of Christians making laws that were Christian-centric, Christian values in them. So, this idea that there should be no limiting principles in our culture and in our government and in our lawmaking is a really bad idea. And feminism comes from that place of there's no limiting principles to what women can do. Women can do anything and everything. So there's no limits in the mind about how people and cultures and groups of people, what they can do. They can do anything and everything. And that's because they're just a bunch of immoral people that want to do immoral things. And so they say, well, if we officially say there is no morality and no God, that means we can just do whatever. The truth is you can't. And people are going to stop you eventually from doing cruel, evil things, which is what happened with fascism. We said, you know what? We're done with this. It's silly. It's dumb. You guys need to stop doing this because you're breaking all of these laws that we actually do hold to be moral laws. There is some moral objectivity in society remaining. You could try to educate a lot of it out of people, but it does exist. And feminism is just one of those things that goes a little too far. In the beginning, it sounded reasonable, rational. It sounded that way, right? And now it's not going well. And it's not just seeping into government, right? It's seeping into our culture and our movies and and now we're seeing the fruit of this tree. And it's absurd. It's just absurd stuff. So this is not a morally founded ideology. That's founded in some kind of strong morals. It's kind of like an I can, therefore I will attitude. You know, it's not good for society. So we need people who will stand up to these bad ideas and say, I don't like that. And in this case, right, Netflix, to try to get back on the point here, Netflix is telling us who their God is. Their God is a woman. And why? Because Aslan represents God. Aslan represents Jesus. He's obviously a lion with a mane, a male lion. He's obviously a male, but you have to have a strong faith in something to break some precedent like this with Aslan. There has to be some kind of strong faith, some real important, compelling reason to make Aslan a woman. And the reason is you have a religion. It's a religion that's trying to substitute Christ. That's literally what's happening. And the church is complicit in this false religion. So I'm not going to say all the church, there are still many churches who stand against this false religion, but there's many people who can't do it. They don't feel that they have enough social cachet or whatever. They have to appear socially virtuous to others because they're afraid of getting condemned and harmed in some way. So that kind of soft power of feminism is actually turns out to be a hard power at a certain point, and people are aware of that. So they know they have to toe the line. And people have to start to realize this is absurd at a certain point. The emperor has no clothes. It's absurd. So just because you don't agree with feminism does not mean you're some kind of woman hater. That's ridiculous.
Yeah. So I think that's one of the main thoughts, the main reaction.
Right. This is a non-thinking, irrational response.
Is not necessarily like, well, maybe there's something to that, but instead it's more like no one would be against feminism unless they were against women. Like I think that's
Right.
kind of the attitude or the response, because you can't possibly have some other reason. Like there couldn't be some other reason. But it does seem like there's a lot of things that are not, there's a lot of things that the church like just welcomes in that are not necessarily like centered on Christ. It's like there's a lot of dabbling, as if Christ wasn't enough. And there's sort of this added, it's like almost like a seeker sensitive kind of thing.
Right.
Of just like, well, we're cool. Like feminism is like a good thing, and we're Christians, so we're just going to align ourselves with that good thing.
Right.
But Christianity doesn't need feminism because it has
We already love women more than anybody else.
Yeah, because you have complete acceptance in Christ for who you are. You have complete satisfaction and validation in Christ. You don't need anything apart from him. You don't need some kind of cultural recognition or status or anything like that. In fact, in Christianity, I would say the less status, the better. It's probably going to be more of an enriching experience for you. So,
yeah. The term "the least of these" is a Christian
yeah,
figure of speech. We stand with the least of these. I
So
guess
that's my
what that
goal.
means also, we stand with fetuses in the womb. That's the least of these at this point.
Yeah.
So that's not a very feminist thing to say.
So that's my goal, is to be one of the least, um, to not necessarily be empowered in my, I don't know, femininity or not feminine. Well, I don't even know what those
Yeah,
words.
what does that even?
I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. Like I don't need, there's nothing I need apart from Christ. So I don't understand the need for feminism anymore.
Yeah, yeah. So,
Or
so sorry about that. I interrupted you, but so here we are. And I think, this disturbing state really is a sign of how far we've come. And I hope that after this, there's going to be a move push in the other direction. But it's going to take people standing up. Like it's not just little old me and you. I think Lord TV was talking about this as well this week. But it's just a few people talking against it. Barely, like so few people. And people are so off the radar, they don't even know what's going on. And then when Narnia hits the shows or the theaters, they're going to be so surprised. Well, that's because you're not paying attention. You got to stop this stuff before it even sprouts into some evil thing. You got to stop it in its tracks. Now is the time to stop it. So that's why we're letting you guys know, and hopefully, something will be done to put a stop to this. But the people who supposedly are fans of C.S. Lewis and support his legacy, where are you people? You don't care about C.S. Lewis and his legacy? These are easy claims to make. Oh, I like his writing. But then when this kind of stuff happens, you're nowhere to be found. So come on, guys. Like, let's stand up for his legacy. Tolkien people were standing up when Amazon is torching his legacy. I mean, they also didn't fully succeed, right? Because it was also too late to do anything. By the time they got these people in there destroying Tolkien's stuff, they're showing up. But now we have no excuse. We should be doing this now because now we should be wise to their tricks. Come on, guys. Absurd. So yeah. we need to do something about that. But yeah, so I guess that's all I had to talk about. Is just Sketch is looking pretty cool. El Tonto Por Cristo looks great. So we're trying to do some stuff, but man, for the most part, Hollywood, I mean, they have 1,000 times the influence we have. And then it wouldn't take that much to push back and at least let ourselves be heard against this kind of Meryl Streep playing Aslan nonsense. But yeah, so hope maybe it's a joke. Maybe it's all just a big terrible joke. I sure hope so. But what a terrible joke if it is. Um if it's real, oh my goodness, this is just devastating. Maybe
I,
Meryl Streep sounds like a man. Her voice sounds like she can make her voice sound like a male lion. Think so?
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, there's certainly roles where you could make it a female character, but this is
It's absurd.
so ridiculous.
Yeah.
Many characters, and there's fun things you can do. Like there's the movie Cinderella, and then there's the movie Cinderfella. Like there's some interesting things you can do with story,
Yeah.
but this is a bit like It's probably a joke.
Well, I think Cinderfella's a bad idea too, but because that also misses the point of that story. Anyway, yeah, there's so much like cultural vandalism happening now that it's just like, why don't you make your own story instead of having to destroy someone else's story? Just make your own story. See if you're creative. I don't think so. So give people who come up with great stories some honor and respect instead of just torching their stuff. Make your own stuff, you know? So anyway, that's what we need. We need better storytellers to make your own stuff. Watch Sketch by Seth Worley instead. Watch El Tonto Por Cristo instead of this terrible Netflix stuff. Just cancel that subscription. If they're gonna keep doing this stuff, I mean, we canceled it a long time ago. So we're done with that stuff. It's so ridiculous. All right, guys, I'm a little bit kerfuffled and flabbergasted. What's another word I could use? Hornswoggled,
Those are good words. Bewildered?
bewildered. I'm like I'm a deer caught in the headlights a little bit. What is going on? So crazy. So yeah, love you guys and hope you guys have a good weekend. Hopefully next week will be better than this one. We'll see.
John, where can people
Pray
find
for us. Pray desperately
us?
and get our sanity back. And that Aslan will be a male. That's what we want. Were you trying to say something before?
Where can people find out more about, where can people read these articles, John?
Yes, you can read them on MediaMoses.com. I'm also on YouTube at Culture Warfare with Jon Croft, and I'm on X at The Media Moses and John Edward Croft. And how about you, Rebecca?
You can find me on Substack at Rebecca Croft and on YouTube at Rebecca Loves Jesus.
Yay. All right, I won't say it this time. I won't say it. I'm too down to say it. Not gonna say it. All right, maybe next week.
I'll say it.
Bye.
Culture.
Bye.